Good evening, everyone. From New York, I'm Ayman Mohideen in for Chris Hayes. For days, the entire world has waited as an American president threatened to kill an entire population. Donald Trump, a man who has gone bankrupt 6 times, who has been impeached twice, and who has 34 felony convictions, that guy, he set a deadline. He set a deadline for Iran to end the war that he started. The ultimatum that he gave, quote, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. And we are now about 45 seconds past his arbitrary deadline. But just over an hour ago, Trump changed that deadline again, after threatening to destroy an entire country's power plants and bridges and civilian infrastructure. After basically promising genocide, Trump got an extension. He now claims a peace settlement with Iran is within reach. And after agreeing to a proposal brokered by Pakistan to stop bombing Iran for 2 weeks, it appears that Iran has agreed to a ceasefire that will open the Strait of Hormuz as long as the U.S. stops bombing it. And as long as Iran keeps collecting $2 million per ship to pass through that Strait of Hormuz, that is at least according to Iranian officials speaking to the New York Times. But what happens in 2 weeks? And that all depends on the whims of the most powerful and arguably the most unstable leader in the world today. Just earlier, Iranian media showed people forming human chains around power plants and on bridges to defy and deter Donald Trump from bombing them. In response, Donald Trump told NBC News that the human chains were, quote, totally illegal, adding they're not allowed to do that. On Capitol Hill, a growing chorus of Democrats this evening, 70 in the House so far, are now demanding that Donald Trump be removed from office for threatening to kill a whole civilization. A few Republicans spoke out against the president's threats as well today. But that was before Trump delayed his threats for another 2 weeks. The president is both belligerent and erratic. And tonight was just the scariest of Trump's increasingly unhinged threats and the walkbacks that he has done time and time again over the past few weeks. Take, for example, March 21st. Donald Trump posted that if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. He publicly threatened to commit a war crime. He gave Iran until the evening of March 23rd, but 12 hours before that deadline, Donald Trump announced that talks were actually going great and that he would extend the deadline to March 26. But Iranian officials denied that there had been any talks at all. But as that deadline loomed, just hours after Trump threatened that there is no turning back and it won't be pretty, guess what he did? He extended the deadline to April 6th. Again, saying that negotiations were going very well. That deadline was supposed to be yesterday, but over the weekend, on Easter, you know what he did? He changed the deadline again in a profanity-laced post. Quote, Tuesday will be power plant day and bridge day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you will be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. Then today, as that deadline loomed, he did it again. He threatened to kill a whole civilization. Would you trust any negotiation with this man? You wouldn't. No one would. You'd actually call the authorities on him. But the problem in this case is that Donald Trump is the authorities, which is why the world is now basically living tweet to tweet, social media post to social media post. All of this as Trump's threats grow increasingly dangerous. We have crossed the line here no matter what happens. The man with sole authority to launch the largest nuclear arsenal that the world has probably ever known, he is either going to make good on that threat in another 2 weeks from now, which is the genocidal behavior of a madman, or he won't. In which case, he is holding the entire world hostage, making increasingly bloodthirsty, apocalyptic threats every few days. That is the world that we now have to take seriously because he is the president of the United States. He's threatening to end civilizations because he can, because he's never really faced any serious consequences for any of his heinous actions that he has taken as president in this country. And the one thing that's painfully clear at this hour is that whether or not he actually commits more atrocities against the Iranian people, Donald Trump is destroying everything that made America better than him. David Rhodes is a national security reporter for MS Now. Robert Malley was the lead negotiator on the 2015 Iran nuclear deal that Donald Trump tore up. And Trita Parsi is the co-founder and executive vice president of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. They all join me now. David, I think you and I had very similar reactions to the news when we heard that a deal or a ceasefire agreement had been made possible, which is what in the hell happened? I mean, I think we were both kind of working our sources throughout the day. We weren't, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I certainly didn't get the impression that there was some kind of deal that was being brokered down to the final minutes. And then an hour before, we get this message from the Pakistani prime minister, followed by a statement from the American president and the Iranian foreign minister, effectively saying that there is now a 2-week ceasefire.
I think we owe a big thank you to the Pakistani government.
Right.
They sort of forced this to happen. I didn't have any reporting of any kind of direct negotiation or even indirect detailed negotiation between the U.S. and Iran. It was really this sort of moment of brinksmanship. And the bottom line of what happened is that Donald Trump backed down.
Yeah.
He had painted himself into a corner. He had described, ending a civilization. He was being hammered domestically. And then, let's be honest, this war has not gone well for the United States. The key issue here was the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. He's got a promise that that will end, but that sent, and they should have anticipated that, and they didn't. And then they lost this pilot. He was recovered, but I think that was a demonstration of how dangerous this was becoming for the Trump administration. From the beginning, this war has not gone as they expected. Iran didn't back down as they expected. And this escalation cycle where Iran kept escalating and never backing down, and Trump really didn't have an answer to it. So I think he backed off.
And he was a little bit, it's safe to say he was erratic even in the demands that he was making. In one hand, he was saying, open the Straits of Hormuz. The next time he would go on and say, we don't need the Strait of Hormuz, let the Europeans figure it out, only then to follow it up with even more threats that he would wipe the entire civilization out if they didn't open the Strait of Hormuz.
And this strange military strategy that we're going to destroy every bridge and power plant in the country, and which wouldn't have achieved anything other than horrible civilian suffering.
Robert, some Republicans will say that this is what they'd like to think of as the madman theory in negotiation, that Trump's threats work here because they can make the Iranians feel a tremendous amount of threat or pressure, and then only for them to realize that he's willing to back down if they agree to his demands. You have been in the room negotiating with the Iranians, or at least indirectly. Give me your sense as to how you read Donald Trump's threats here and whether they have worked.
So first of all, I really want to pause on the point you made earlier. I mean, the threats that he proffered. We really have now the marriage of infinite immorality with infinite power, and that should give everyone a shudder down their spine. So we can't forget what happened, even if this ends, even if there is a ceasefire that holds. Secondly, very hard for the president to paint this as a triumph. The one achievement may be the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, which was not closed before he launched this war. So I don't know how that could be depicted as a great victory. I think, as David just said, he probably didn't want to go far. He wants to end this war because of the price of oil, because of inflation, because of everything it's doing to the market. The third point really is a question: is this going to last? And there's so many uncertainties. There's so many ambiguities. The Iranians say that the strait is open, but only under their control. Is that something that the president will accept? And the Iranians say that the deal will be based on their 10 points. I can't imagine the U.S. agreeing to half of those points, even a third of them. So we're not out of harm's way yet. But it's obviously, as David said, good thing that the Pakistanis did this. Good thing that the president seems to have backed down. But I don't know where we'll be 2 weeks from now.